What is up, guys? Matthew, Actual Exotic Cars, thought I would make a quick video this week. So the topic for today's video, if you haven't already seen it, current car makes that are not sold in the US, and I guess I will be ranking them at what I believe their chances that they will ever be sold in the US is. So this isn't necessarily which one of these makes I prefer the most myself personally. This is more of will we ever see these sold in the US? These are ones that are currently being made, not ones that have since went out of business. So don't expect like Yugo or Zastava, I should say, or anything like that to be on this list. And without further ado, let's begin. So basically, to try to make things somewhat even, obviously I can't have every single car make not sold in the US. There's a plethora of them on this list. I kind of chose a few from all over the world, a lot of different regions, just out of curiosity. And there's actually some of these that I didn't even recognize. So that's actually kind of a car nut. So some of these are not very well known. So I'll start at the beginning here. Alpine. So Alpine is a British car brand, I believe. It's an electric one. I think it's starting at about 50, 60K or something like that. From what I understand, it's mostly like sports cars, and I don't think there's too much of a market for that in the US right now. The big thing it does have going for it, though, is I definitely think any new car brands are going into the US. Most of them I feel like are going to have to be EVs just because of the new regulations. Whether we like it or not, that's just the way the government is making things nowadays. So I'm going to give them a solid B. I mean, there has been British cars sold in the US in the past. There still is sort of... You could say brands like Jaguar and stuff, but they're still technically made in China for the most part. So I don't really know how you categorize that. But anyway, I'm going to put Alpine at B. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they were sold in the US. I just don't think that it is necessarily like S tier, almost guaranteed they will at some point be sold in the US. So that is where I'm going to put Alpine. BYD. This is a good one. Actually, this is a tough one to do. I'm going to put this at A. If we had a complete free market, I would put it at S. So for those of you that don't know, I have made a video on this in the past on the Chinese car market. BYD is a Chinese car manufacturer. I want to make like a full, and I might do that in the future, do like a full, kind of like I did the car dealership scam, make like an hour or two documentary just on Chinese cars, because I feel like most Americans don't know anything about them. And at some point, whether we like it or not, I have an odd feeling we're going to be seeing at least some of them come stateside. They're already starting to break into the second world a lot. Actually, a lot of Russian cars right now, the new ones, just due to sanctions, are Chinese, so we're already seeing them go through Eastern Europe. I definitely think at some point we're going to see them break into the EU, and eventually I definitely think they're going to trickle down into the US. Heck, there's actually a decent amount of them already getting sold in Mexico right now. So anyway, without blabbing on too much, BYD is like an $11,000 Chinese electric car. So just because it's electric, I think it might be able to slip through. The big thing is the US is going to try to put a crap ton of tariffs on these to try to get the big three to survive. And I honestly don't think, I mean, the quality in these actually aren't that bad from what I've heard. I actually personally know people that have rented these when they went abroad, and they actually said they weren't that bad. So, and that's coming from actually like upper class Americans. And like I said, these are like 11, 12 grand brand new. Heck, personally, I would probably buy, electric car for 11 grand. So I'm going to put it at A tier. I would put it at S tier just because I feel like it's such a good deal for, what you're getting. But with tariffs and everything and embargoes and depending on elections and politicians and whatnot, and trying to, keep American manufacturing, I'm going to put it at A tier because I feel like a lot of politicians are going to try everything they can. Same thing with American citizens to try to keep this out of the country. Citroen, so French cars. I also have not done a video on French cars yet. Maybe I should at some point. Personally, I'm not a big fan. A lot of these companies have already tried in the US and they have already failed. I'm going to put them at... D tier. I don't really see them making a breakthrough at all. There's been other bigger French names like Renault, I would say, that have been sold at the US at some point and just didn't really work out. French cars are very quirky. They actually did a really good, I want to say it was like a Grand Tour episode on French cars. And I know they probably went a little above and beyond what they should have, but they're definitely different, and they're definitely not really known for quality either. I mean, they're somewhat popular in Europe, but from what the mechanics I've talked to that I'm working on them, they're not very impressed. So I'm going to put it on D tier, and I'm going to be quite honest. I don't know as much about French cars as I probably should, but for right now, we'll just leave it at D tier. Um, Granted, there is no like F tier here because I feel like there's a chance for all of these cars to be in the U.S. at some point. I just don't know if this is the brand to make it. So we're still on European car brands, and this is Cupra. The logo is kind of cut off. I'm actually going to put this at S tier. Reason being, Cupra, if I understand correctly, is owned by Volkswagen. It is basically their EV car brand. And first thing, they actually do look pretty sharp. When last time I went over to Europe, I saw them everywhere. I had no idea what they were, and then I started looking into them. And I think they have already announced in a few years that they're going to try to break through the U.S. market. Good thing going for them. Again, German, Volkswagen. There's already a dealership network here, so they shouldn't have a big issue at all breaking through. And they are actually sharp-looking cars. So if you haven't seen a Cupra yet, I would definitely advise checking it out. As far as like reliability and all that goes, I don't really know. I definitely think there's a market for them in the U.S., and it kind of surprises me that German automakers haven't really tried to break through the EV market here as much as I thought that they would. Dacia. Oh, man, this is a good one. Biggest issue with Dacia is I don't know if they have the funding to break through the U.S. car market. Would they fit in the U.S. perfectly? Yes, they would. From what I understand, they're mostly known for like their SUVs, crossover types, and I think that would fit the U.S. perfectly. And they're at least in Europe, they're known as a cheaper car brand. So if you don't know, Dacia is like the Romanian car maker. It's definitely known as being like a cheaper, like $16,000-$17,000, entry level SUV crossover type vehicle. They make cars as well. Would they break over? I don't know if they would. I'm gonna put them at B. I would like to see them in the U.S. at some point. I think it would fit the U.S. market perfectly. I just don't know because it's such a small car manufacturer. I feel like they would have to have like the backing of somebody to break through the U.S. That would be my biggest issue. Okay, now we're going Japanese. This is Daihatsu. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. I apologize. This is a Japanese maker of a lot of mini trucks, K trucks, stuff like that. Do I think they're going to enter the U.S.? Unfortunately, with all these K truck bans that we are seeing now, I'm going to put D tier. There's so many Japanese makes already in the U.S., and just what this company specializes in, they're good at what they do. Just all these bans and everything. It seems like the U.S., for some odd reason, we say we care about emissions, but at the same time, anything that's small, everything gets bigger, and a company that tries to make something smaller gets regulated out because of safety or whatever BS excuse they have, which I find completely hypocritical. And unfortunately, I feel like Daihatsu is one of those companies that kind of gets tossed into that. So unfortunately, I'm going to put them in the D tier. I personally don't really see that happening. Geely. So this is a Chinese car brand. They make sort of more like ordinary passenger cars. I think they make some SUVs and crossovers as well. Nothing really special. I think most of them are just kind of rip-off cars. I think I read an article somewhere. It's like the working man's Volvo. Also, Volvo doesn't have a big car market in the U.S. They're here, albeit very small. I'm going to put them in C tier. At some point, if they do some sort of EV hybrid thing, maybe. I don't think they'll have as big of an impact as a BYD would have, but I mean, it's all going to start off with pricing. I mean, I just don't see U.S. automakers being able to match what some of these companies can have their pricing at. I just don't know if a Chinese vehicle, I know the reputation would not be very good in the U.S. market. I think what gets BYD over a Geely is just the fact that just the price point, it's just impossible to beat. Lancia. And this brand is pretty much dead already. So I'm going to put this in the D tier. I heard something that they're going to try to do a rebrand with electronic cars. For you, those of you that don't know, Lancia has been sold in the U.S. It's kind of like a partner brand for Fiat. So imagine like, Chevy with Pontiac or something like that. That would be Lancia. Lancia was actually kind of for a while there. They were like the rally car, like the Subaru of Italy, if that makes sense. The Lancia Integral was like a huge car for a while and really known in that scene. And unfortunately, it's kind of fallen off a cliff. They really only sell one car now, and if I understand correctly, it's really only sold in Italy. I think they're just keeping that one car around. If I understand, too, it's just a rebrand anyway. It's not even an original. just to keep the namesake going, but they're not really doing that much, and I just don't see anything happening with them in the U.S. in anytime in the near future. Unfortunately, I do like Lancia, but there's just nothing going on for them right now. MG, so we're back to British. The new MG cars are not like the ones of old that we remember here in the States. And actually, most of them are pretty much Chinese cars, and they do have some like smaller crossovers and whatnot. I'm gonna go C tier. I mean, yeah, there's a possibility. I just don't know how big that possible would be. You see them around in Europe quite a bit. Like I said, though, they're basically just a Chinese vehicle with an MG make on it. And unfortunately, a lot of British vehicles, that's kind of the boat. I haven't made a video on British vehicles yet, but it seems like a lot of these companies are getting bought out by Chinese companies, and basically they're just keeping the names on there, and they're pretty much just Chinese cars. So I'm going to put it in the C tier. I mean, it's possible. They have been here before. I just don't know how much of a market in the U.S. there would be for them. Next up, Opel. So Opel has, in a weird way, kind of already been in the U.S. So a lot of the Buick models for a while were literally just rebranded Opels. I just went on a trip recently to Germany, and I did not want to, but I got basically rented an Opel vehicle. The Volkswagen rental ran out, and I got stuck in an Opel. So Opel is a German company. I believe it is managed by Renault, if I understand correctly. So I think they're with the whole Stellantis thing in France. Their vehicles don't really impress me that much at all. And like I said, they have technically been sold in the U.S. under the Buick brand name, and they didn't really do too great over here. So I'm going to put them in the C tier. I don't know if we would ever really see them over here. I mean, they definitely are a big brand name over in Europe, but European cars and American cars are definitely not the same, and I just don't know if Opel would be a good fit. Peugeot. Okay, back to French. Long story short, I guess I'm just going to put these guys in the D tier. Do I think they will ever make it to the U.S.? Probably not. I just don't see a lot of French cars being very like U.S. friendly. And again, this is not my personal ranking for these vehicles. If it was like some of these, like Lancia and Datsun, would be like up here. This is just the probability that I think they will ever end up in the U.S. And unfortunately, French vehicles, they have been sold in the U.S. before, and they just have not done very well. So just for that reason alone, I'm going to put them in the D tier. Seat. So Seat is another one of those companies most Americans don't know. The best way I can describe them, at least what it seems like with their current lineup, a lot of it's just rebranded Fiats, and this is technically a Spanish company. So from a lot of what I've read, for example, the Panda that I have that I'm trying to sell, more updates on that soon. You could also buy a Seat Panda, which is basically, I guess, like a Spanish-made Panda. I don't even know if it was made in Spain, but Seat's technically a Spanish company. I don't really think there's too much unique stuff that I think would go over very well in the U.S. market. They do make a lot of like European-type vehicles, and I just don't see it necessarily happening. They might break through in the EV market, though. That wouldn't surprise me, but the Fiat 500 electric is not doing very hot right now in the U.S., so just for that reason alone, they're going to go down here in the D tier, for better or worse. Skoda. So Skoda is a Czech-made vehicle, and you do see a decent amount of them in Europe. They're definitely more of an entry-level vehicle. Back in the Eastern Bloc days, I would definitely say these are like some of the top-tier vehicles that you could get in the Eastern Bloc. And honestly speaking, I would probably put Skoda as a B, right up there with DC and Alpine. Do I think we should have Skoda in the U.S.? 100%. I like Skodas. I think they're pretty reliable for what you're getting. I think they're quirky vehicles. I personally enjoy them. Again, that's just another one of those dealership network and all that stuff if they can get over here. I think that's what's put something at like a Cupra above compared to some of these other brands. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're better. It's just Skoda is still more of an old type. Shouldn't say old type. It's internal combustion. A lot of car-based, passenger car-based, which unfortunately is not going too well in the U.S. right now, which I wish it was. I just find it ironic that everybody's complaining about emissions and electric cars and EVs and blah, 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 but good luck trying to buy a car. Like, it's all crossovers and SUVs, which I think is kind of pathetic. Anyway, Next up, we're going back to Japan. So this is Suzuki. I have a soft spot for Suzuki. So last time I went to Europe, there was a Suzuki Jimmy for sale, I want to believe, in the middle of a mall. And it's starting at like $15,000 for what's basically a Jeep. So four-wheel drive, simple. I think it's just manual transmission, bare bones, SUV. Very cheap price point, and Suzuki's actually, if you look at the reliability ratings, regardless of what people say, they're actually not that bad at all. It's still a Japanese car. It's still going to be more reliable than a Jeep, I can guarantee you that. And it's going to be for a much cheaper price point. And Suzuki's have been sold in the U.S. in the somewhat near past. So for that reason, I'm going to put them at S tier. I personally like Suzuki, so that might make this kind of biased. But the products that they're offering right now, I think would fit the U.S. market perfectly. They're more known for SUV, crossover type, off-road type. And I definitely think that's something that at least the U.S. consumers right now are gobbling up. So for that reason alone, I'm going to put them in the S tier. Vauxhall, that's the next one. British. So basically this is kind of like a GM like version of Holden, but for the UK. I'm going to put them at D tier just because, like I said, it's kind of a GM thing. In GM. I honestly, I feel like they already have enough brands on the cutting block. Holden, which I think would be the goodest example of this, already got cut. I think Buick's pretty much next on the chopping block. I don't know. I never really understood the purpose of GMC, to be honest. It wouldn't surprise me 10 years from now if the only GM brands that we see are Cadillac and Chevy, honestly. I don't know whether that'll be true or not, but I guess just for those reasons, I'm putting them on the D tier. Next up, Zaz. So Zaz is a Ukrainian car manufacturer. I'm going to right off the bat put them at D tier. I don't really see them making... Most of what they make is just rebadge things. I don't really think they do anything necessarily too original. They're just kind of a remnant of, I guess, an old Soviet car factory. Even in the Eastern Bloc, I don't see too many Zaz cars. I'm sure there's a little bit more in Ukraine, especially with the whole situation with Russia right now. I just don't see them ever making a breakthrough, especially in the U.S. market in the near future. They need to conquer, their local territory first and hopefully make some original things. So that is what I feel about Zaz. Lada. So I do have a soft spot for Lada, and I'm going to put them in A tier. So hear me out here. I just said this whole thing about Russia-Ukraine. Yes, this is a Russian auto market, so I'm going to, I guess, go back on my word and say theoretical, non-political world. If there wasn't anything going there, you can get a lot of brand new for like 14, 15 grand, like a SUV 4x4. And I honestly feel like that's something in the U.S. that is desperately needed that nobody is making right now. I mean, the Bronco, it really disappointed me because I thought they had a ton of potential for that. And even the base model Bronco was like 38 grand or something stupid. So you could basically, a Lada is a fraction of that price, and I feel like would fulfill all that. So I definitely think that they would sell here. They have been sold in Canada in the past. So I definitely think there's a market, and I definitely think they definitely sold a decent amount, at least for Canadian standards, while they were over there. Whatever is going on over there was not going on right now. I definitely feel like there would be a market for them in the U.S. So for that reason alone, I'm going to put them A tier. Another Russian or Soviet car make, Gaz. So Gaz, I'm going to put in the D tier. So I don't have a problem with Gaz. I feel like they made a lot of really cool cars and stuff in the 60s and 70s. Some of their really old stuff's pretty cool. They mostly make, from what I understand now, more commercial type vehicles, and I just don't see the reasoning for like commercial fleet type vehicles that somebody in the American market would get a Gaz compared to, some of the things that we have available to us. And again, outside of Russia, they haven't really... Lada is an international brand. Gaz really isn't. So until that changes, I just don't see anything happening in the U.S. Renault. So I believe this is our last French brand on the list. I'm going to put them on the B tier. So they're definitely a more well-known brand than Citroën, Peugeot, and some of these ones on the bottom here. They definitely have a lot more to offer. And they have been sold in the U.S. in the past, so there is a precedent. They just didn't do very well. And Will that happen again? You know, I have no idea. But just for the fact that they have been sold in the U.S. before, and they are such a predominant brand outside of the U.S., that I think that alone is enough to put them at a B tier, but I definitely would not put them higher. UAZ! Okay, so I'm going to try to be as non-biased as I can towards this car brand. So honestly, UAZ, I am also going to put them on the B tier, and hear me out here. So UAZ is pretty much like a Russian Soviet off-roading 4x4 brand. They do make SUVs, and on top of the Buhankas and the Hunters, which are kind of like a Jeep-type vehicle, I am personally trying to sell them through UAZ America, so if you want to go to UAZAmerica.com, if you want to get an UAZ into the U.S., please go there, and that's your one-stop shop for everything UAZ U.S. But do I think that they would be able to be sold like brand new UAZ dealerships in the U.S.? I mean, they tried to do it. Bramac tried to import them into the U.S. a couple years ago. Again, this is theoretical. There's no wars or conflicts or whatever going on in the world right now video. If none of that stuff was happening, would that have went through? I don't know. I mean, car manufacturers always say they're going to import stuff in the U.S., and I feel like most of the time it never happens. So even if the current situation never happened, would UAZ be in the U.S. right now? I don't really know, to be honest. Do I think there's a chance? I think the products that they make would sell in the U.S., though. So they're a very small company. They would need some sort of international partnership, but if they did end up getting that, I definitely feel like the products they sell would accommodate the U.S. market very well compared to some of these other companies. Chery, next one. So this is also another Chinese brand. I'm going to put them on the C tier. The problem is with all these Chinese makes, and by the way, there's a ton of Chinese makes. This is just a fraction of what there is out there, and there's only so many I could include on this video. Will they break through the U.S. market? Maybe. I don't think they'll have an impact like a BYD does. Their retail prices I feel like, are still competitive with what a lot of the Japanese auto manufacturers are selling in the U.S. And honestly, I feel like if an American consumer had to choose between Japanese and Chinese, they would probably choose Japanese more times than not. So for that reason alone, I'm going to go C tier. Great Wall Motors. I'm also going to go C tier with this. So Great Wall Motors is kind of, I don't want to say like Chinese UAZ, but kind of Chinese UAZ. They make a lot of like SUVs, crossovers. I believe they make a couple models of pickup trucks as well. Again, price point wise though, I feel like these still sell for like retail. And granted, trucks in the US, there's no trucks in the US that sell for what they should in my mind. I feel like a pickup truck should start at 20 grand at the most. And geez, I think the Maverick's probably the closest thing to that right now, and that's still like 30 grand. But Great Wall Motors, again, I think the retail on these are still like 25, 26. And if somebody had to choose between, you know, a 30 grand Maverick and a 25, 26 grand, it's actually going to be more with tariffs just because they're a Chinese company. I think it would be about the same price. I just don't see it happening. JAC Motors. Oh, man. I'm going to go B tier. So this is another Chinese make. And JAC is actually pretty big right now in Mexico, and that's probably one of my big reasons for putting them on the B tier. Again, another like more 4x4 truck GMC type make, and I feel like the vehicles that they make would accommodate the U.S. market well. I also think most of them are cheaper than the Great Wall Motors vehicles, so for that reason alone, and the fact that I believe that I want to say that they're going to start facilities in Mexico or something like that. Like I said, they have a lot bigger presence in Latin America right now. I think for that reason alone, it's worthwhile enough to put them in B tier. I just have a tough time. The reason I'm not putting them higher is anything that's not EV. I just have a tough time seeing them get into the U.S. market. Suzuki's kind of an exception just because they broke through it before, and they still sell motorcycles here, so at least they have some sort of contact. JAC, like I said, they're going to have to break through, and if it's not EV related like BYD is, I just feel like they're going to have a tough time doing that. So thank you guys for watching. Like I said, this was just kind of a quick video just to fend off my curiosity of which one of these car makes do I actually think would break through the US market. Feel free to watch this video in a few years and try to prove me wrong. I don't know, I'll be curious if any of these do. If any of these makes in the D tier break through the U.S. market, I would actually be very elated. I would be very happy. I just don't know if it will happen, at least not with the current makeups of these companies. They would have to completely change the lineup or be EV only or do something extreme, I feel like, to break through the U.S. market. But anyway, that's the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.